Welcome to our Faith Today podcast. And today we have Dan Collado, who I've been getting to know in the last couple of years, I guess. Yeah. And Dan is a member of the EFC's advisory committee. But we've also been developing a relationship in the last little while. And we actually want to talk about relationship today. And so I'm going to ask Dan. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We've already had breakfast today. It was a good start to the day.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of a self-introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you do and a little bit about your family. Of course, we could take the whole hour to do that, but give us a bit of a sense of your involvements, and we'll launch into our discussion then.
Sure. Yeah. So, my name's Dan Collado. Currently, I'm the Executive Director of Aboriginal Bible Academy, as well as my connection with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. I chair the Indigenous Guiding Group for Mission Canada, which is kind of it is the home missions expression of the PAOC. So I've been involved with that since 2019. But my work with ABA, Aboriginal Bible Academy, has been since 2009. Prior to that, had some good 15 years of ministry experience, where the majority of that had been within Indigenous context. I was in a First Nations community up in Northern Ontario, a fly-in community at the time, Round Lake, also known as Weagamo Lake. And then immediately following that, I was 10 years up in Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, where I pastored there with my wife. And we got two boys, and they are now grown up. They're married and two grandchildren. And so that's kind of the blitzkrieg of my life and how I got to this point.
And from which nation?
Mohawk. Yeah. So I'm status Mohawk from Tyendinaga, Bay of Quinte Mohawks, just 2 hours east of Toronto. I'm kind of halfway between Toronto and Ottawa, right along the 401 corridor. It's interesting. I didn't get involved within this Indigenous ministry, which is now, it's extending into almost 30 years now. I didn't get into Indigenous ministry because of me being Indigenous and having status or anything like that. I won't get into this story. It's a long story, but I had graduated Bible college. I was ready to go overseas. I thought I was going to be a missionary, and a missionary overseas, that is. And my wife, not my wife, my mom, she had always wanted to do some missions work, but her missions trip got canceled, and she ended up exploring Canada's north. She was a teacher by trade, and she found out that there was need of teachers in Canada's north. And so when she went there, during that period, it was before internet and all of that, and so she would write snail mail. And I remember reading one of her...
That's with the post office, for those of you who don't know what that is.
Yes, the generation. For us, yes, within that, the company that is now on strike. That's who delivered our mail. I received this letter from Mom. She was up in the community, and she said, "Dan, if you were here, you could preach every day." And it was kind of just that statement that spoke to me concerning how I was limiting God, how I saw God, how he could use me. I thought, okay, here are my strengths, Lord. So this must mean my calling looks like this. And no doors seemed to be open or opening. And so we ended up, from that, just that quick word of encouragement, and I don't even know if Mom was meaning it as an encouragement, but she simply made that comment. And from that moment, I said, okay, Lord, and I prayed a very dangerous prayer. And I said, Lord, if you have a need for me to fulfill, I will walk through that door. So you open a door and I will walk through it. And I prayed it with all my heart, a simple prayer. From that moment, it just seemed like divine appointments began to happen. Doors began to open, connections, networking, opportunities for ministry expressions happened. And they just tended to seem to be always Indigenous in nature.
Oh, okay.
And so, so that began my journey. And that's, almost 30 years ago. And I keep walking through Indigenous doors, it seems. Yeah.
The other thing I want to bring to your attention is that the Faith Today podcast is published by the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. Are you receiving the EFC's Canada Watch newsletter? It brings you the latest updates on Canadian public policy changes, EFC ministry activities, partnerships, and research projects. Join thousands of other Canadian Christians getting Canada Watch by mail or email. Visit evangelicalfellowship.ca to sign up today. That's evangelicalfellowship.ca. Now let's get back to the conversation. Well, that's a really great segue. I'm going to ask you at the end of our podcast to say a little bit more about, we like to highlight the work that you're doing, but at the end of the podcast, tell us a little bit about Aboriginal Bible Academy and what that's all about. But that's a great segue into what we want to talk about is relationships. You and I have been talking the last little while about this very topic, about the idea of relationship. Certainly here at the EFC, we've been doing lots with Indigenous, non-Indigenous relations. So it's kind of built into the word, and reconciliation and right relations. These are the languages. But I think probably for the most part, most of us, certainly most of us believers, have a sense that relationship's really important. Like relationship is part of who we are. But you've already kind of talked about some of these relationships that you've had that actually served as kind of pushing you forward. So maybe tell about one of those really important outside of family.
Sure.
I think I told you ahead of time that I was going to ask you about an outside of family relationship, how that relationship developed and why that relationship became so important. Maybe it still is important. I don't know who you're going to pick. And how that actually served you, not only like certainly spiritually, but in life.
Because it wasn't needing to go outside of family. If it was inside, it would have been my grandfather, who's very influential to me. But outside of family, it was later in life, actually just coming out of Bible school, college, and feeling like I'm spinning my wheels. Doors weren't opening for ministry expressions. I was completely convinced of the call of God on my life, and yet no opportunity seemed to be opening. And I was just kind of questioning, what do I need to do, Lord? Where, what's going to happen? And so in culmination with this letter that my mom had written to me, and feeling that conviction in my heart of being willing to, okay, Lord, I'm willing to do anything where there's a need. You open the door and I'll walk through it. And so divine appointments began to happen. God was setting up these opportunities to meet and make connections. And it was Bill Prankard from the Bill Prankard Evangelistic Association. He was a longtime pastor in the 50s, 60s, and then in the 70s felt the call of God towards a more evangelistic ministry. And so he started up the Bill Prankard Evangelistic Association, and he happened to have meetings at our home church. It was back in the day, when churches would still have evangelists come for a set of meetings over several days. And long story short, through that connection there, I was able to meet him after the service, and God really guided our conversation, and he felt directed that I need to bring you up on my next trip north. And there was a real, I just so appreciated Bill's willingness to listen to the direction of the Spirit of God to invite this young rookie of a minister. Haven't really, to that point, hadn't really had any, certainly extended ministry expressions. So not a whole lot of experience, but just was convinced of the call of God and the hand of God on my life, and provided opportunity for there to be, for me to be in ministry, for me to experience now with his ministry, being in Canada, evangelistic, he had a very strong relationship and connection within Indigenous communities.
Right.
And so from not just Indigenous First Nation, but also Inuit, and had a long-standing truly conviction and call of God to reach the Indigenous peoples. And it was one of these trips that he took me on when he went, and just provided me that opportunity to experience that, to witness Northern life, to witness Indigenous culture within those contexts, and being able to kind of work out not just my salvation but my calling, regarding that.
So he was an older
Yes.
person, like a senior to you, basically.
Like a
That's
mentor.
interesting, because I wasn't sure what kind of story you were going to tell.
Right.
We didn't talk about it. And same thing for me. Like, I've had several older men in my life who've had such tremendous influence upon me, because it's interesting when we talk about relationships, we often talk about, or we often tend to assume almost like peer relationships. And those are real relationships. I'm not saying they aren't, but these are actually more like mentorship relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I had a early in my career, I had a theologian that I took. I'm a theologian, and I took a class with Stan Grens, who was a Baptist theologian, and unfortunately he's passed away now. But he had this habit of taking younger theologians under his wing and taking them places, and doing projects. I actually did a project with him, and he had a tremendous amount of influence on me, and we actually developed a friendship. Coming out
and
of
that would be it was that level of synergy that would happen. There wasn't this official, okay, I'm now mentoring you, very organic, and just a sense of, here's a young guy who's interested in pursuing the call of God that he feels on his life, and so let's give him opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I know I've been getting to know you in the last little while, and I know one thing that you often say is, you say, I don't speak for all Indigenous people, but I'll often ask you, what's an Indigenous perspective on X?
Yeah.
And so I know that you do say that, but like, from your perspective, when you compare, you walk kind of in both worlds. You walk in sort of the Euro-Canadian world, but you also work in the Indigenous world. When you think about relationship, like how does an Indigenous perspective on relationship maybe differ from a European sense?
Yeah. Well, one thing, I think all cultures value relationship.
Right.
So it's not a matter of there being that much difference. It more has to do with the journey towards the relationship. I mean, I think every human being recognizes that's a good relationship or that's a bad relationship, certainly within, certain parameters. There's certainly a collective innate desire in every human to be in relationship. Right. And so for Indigenous people, when relationships are being considered, when interactions between individuals are being considered, from an Indigenous person, there is what would be seen as, and this is really a foundational pillar of a typical Indigenous worldview. And the more a person has been kind of steeped and lived and grew up within this traditional Indigenous thought, this would be, so much more to the forefront of their decision-making processes and their value system. But a key pillar within Indigenous thought and a worldview is having this communal understanding of existence. So it's this idea of there's an interconnectedness of everything. It's not just humanity is interconnected, you and I, but all of creation, that we're part of creation. And so it's kind of like this wholeness of bringing everything of that into every experience we have. So in regards to relationships, that experience and the effort in coming into relationship, the Indigenous person doesn't do that in isolation. It's not categorized as, let's say, we can have all kinds of different kinds of conversations. There's those surface dialogue. There's the kind of conversation relationship that you have at the checkout at the grocery store, the kind of conversation relationship that you have in the workplace,
right.
The relationships that are in the family, the relationships that you have in the neighborhood and in your community. For a Euro-Canadian, that can very easily be quite isolated from one another, siloed, and so we categorize those. And for those, and I say we because I grew up within a very Euro-Canadian kind of setting, but from a traditional Indigenous point of view, there is a sense of community, and so things are approached from more of a wholeness, not necessarily an isolated incident. Now, it's not like, an Indigenous person enters into a conversation and thinks that they're speaking to all of creation when it's just one person. But there's just that underlining kind of scaffolding that exists there that everything's connected.
Right.
There's an underlying recognition that everything has a certain measure of influence upon everything else. And so that affects how we approach then relationships with one another. Right. So there is that communal and community understanding, the idea that we are in a community and therefore the community tends to take priority, whereas within typical European or Euro-Canadian mindset, there's more of the individual is celebrated. And so that affects your relationship. So it becomes, for an Indigenous person, let me say it like this. You think of when you marry into, or you marry your spouse, depending on how that person grew up in the family dynamic, if they had very strong familial ties and kind of come from an extended family dynamic, there's a strong possibility you're not just marrying your spouse.
Yeah, right.
Oh, sorry. You're not just marrying your spouse, you're marrying the family, right? And so you'll be introduced to the dynamic of the siblings, mom and dad, the aunts and uncles.
Now, that's fascinating because my daughter was just at a wedding with an Indigenous friend here last week. And at the reception, they had, it was a small wedding, but they had where people could just stand up and say things, right? And my daughter mentioned how everyone took the time to specify and lay out their relations. Like, I'm so-and-so's cousin, and I'm brother to and sister to. And she said the bulk of the time was actually talking about their relationships.
Right. Yeah.
And then they would say, well, we wish you well for your wedding. But most of the time was about who they were relationally, which was really fascinating.
Yeah. And so that's very much, a part of the Indigenous dynamic concerning relationships. So there's a wholeness approach that comes with
so
that.
You and I have already been talking about this for a few months already, about There's something has happened in the technological world. We were talking earlier about how even in a Euro Canadian setting, in an age gone by, you would have a small number of people that you would live around. You'd live probably in a small community. You went to a church, or there was a community center, or there's sort of a center of town. And you knew a really relatively small number of people. Like most of us probably have more, if you're on Facebook, anyone who's maybe on social media probably has more quote unquote friends, we call them friends, on social media than some of those people had their entire life.
Right.
Right. And so as we think about the changing dynamic of relation, because we keep talking about relationships, we even say, how many friends do you have on Facebook, right? But are those relationships? Right. And there's these layers, I guess. Yes. And that's what I wanted to kind of dig in with you, is because I've been asking you the question, and I think we've been trying to explore this, is like, we all have so many layers of, let's put it this way, people that we know at least.
Yes.
And they're certainly not all equal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so how do we think about those layers? And then what do we do about them? Like, how do we, I'm struggling to try to figure out, like, how do I prioritize, as it were, all of these relationships? What are your thoughts on some of that? I know it's huge, but.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, one thing we need to recognize, the varying, the variable, the dynamics of relationship. I think I mentioned it already earlier, just about workplace relationships and the home relationships, family relationships, neighborhood relationships, and understanding that with those scenarios comes variables and dynamics that come with it, and something that I think would help us, because as followers of Christ, what we never want to lose out is our purpose for being here, to be ambassadors of Christ, to share the good news, to bring others into a saving knowledge of Him, but recognizing that not every conversation and scenario is conducive to that, but something that I think we need to be conscious of, because it's something that we can very easily slip into, especially concerning, our modern society that we live in, with the modern conveniences of social media and things of that nature, is that we can treat interaction with one another as more transactional than transformational.
Okay, yeah.
And so there is that tendency to treat the end product. So say within a church setting, a Christian setting, we know that Christ is who we want to share about. That's who we want to introduce people to. If we're not careful, we can very easily make that a transactional interaction.
Right.
Where it's about Jesus being the product.
Right.
And so we want to get to the product as quickly as possible, and so we spend an exorbitant amount of time polishing our process to get to the product. And in so being, we have equated efficiency of getting to the destination with efficacy, right? Where we think we're being efficient, by being efficient, we've been effective.
Right.
And obviously, that's not always the case.
This conversation is pretty good. The other thing I want to talk to you about today is subscribing to Faith Today magazine. For over 40 years, Faith Today has been dedicated to hosting Canada's Christian conversation on issues in our churches and society. One of the best ways to keep up with this ongoing, timely conversation among Canada's 4 million evangelical Christians is to get our free print magazines. Magazines are now free to mailing addresses within Canada. Learn more and subscribe now at faithtoday.ca. Let's get back to the conversation. So let's bring that right down. Like, are you talking about sort of the idea of we meet someone and our goal, I think I've used the language of gospel projects, the danger of making people into gospel projects. Right. And so we're always thinking about, how do I take this conversation to the next step where I can introduce them to the Bible or to introduce them to Jesus, and it makes them into a project. Yeah. And you're saying making Jesus into a product.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there's a tension there, isn't there? Like, it feels like a tension because like we've got limited amount of time, we've got a limited amount of opportunity. Like, how do we think about that? Like, there was you and I think, grew up in kind of the same era and probably had our theological education around the same era. There was a movement called friendship evangelism, and for all of what it was good, there was also this sense, though, is that you develop friendships so that you can introduce people to Jesus. And is that bad?
No, I mean, but it is. You tapped into it about there is a tension there, because we recognize that as followers of Christ, I mean, our purpose is about worshiping the Lord and bringing others into that opportunity. Of getting to know Him and
into that we even call it into a relationship with Jesus.
And so it is important because, I mean, we're convinced that this is why we were created. Mm-hmm. This is our very purpose in life, is to worship the Lord and then to help others to come into that. And so understandably, it's a crucial end game, end goal. But because of its importance, we can get so fixated on that process that we can tend to be simply interested in saving souls and not people.
Right.
And I think I'm reminded of one of my professors in Bible college who actually had that written on the chalkboard back then. It was Jesus didn't come to save souls, and He left it there. And then He came into the room and began his lecture by saying He came to save people in their totality. Right. And so again, it leaned into this idea of the wholeness of the gospel, of the shalom for that Jewish people would have. It's not just some surface peace, some lack of conflict in one particular area. There's a wholeness that it's being talked of. Right. It's something that resonates very strongly within an Indigenous mindset and worldview. Again, this communal understanding of existence. We're all connected. Everything is connected. That we are to have this wholeness. We are to live in such a way that helps, that is conducive to bringing about this wholeness. I'm Mohawk, and I don't speak Cree, but there is a Plains Cree term. It's called Miwakotowin, and it conveys the idea that there is a responsibility we have to be in good relationship with Creator and with creation. And it underlines this responsibility that we need to walk in a good way. We have a responsibility. It's not just a hope,
right?
But there's a responsibility we have to be in good relation with Creator and good relation with the creation.
Right. Can I pause you there?
Yeah, sure.
So when you say creation, though, it's interesting you say I think a Euro way might say good relationship with the Creator. Yes, I think we've made some progress, and we'll say good relationship with creation, and then we'd say, but good relationship with one another. But you're kind of including the one another with creation. Is that right? Did I catch that right?
Yes, you did. Because within the Indigenous mindset, the worldview, we are all part of creation. A typical Euro-Canadian view, instead of having a communal understanding of existence, right, where you're all part of this interconnectedness, there's more of a hierarchy that's been established, and man is kind of at the top and measures exacts a certain measure of influence. But that hierarchy is kind of established through metrics like fastest, strongest, smartest, that kind of thing. And so it champions individualism and celebrates those things, and to be, an entrepreneur and to be an explorer and to, that kind of thing.
Sort of a functional
that ends up separating, this idea of with relationship, we compartmentalize again. Okay, well, there's creation as in, natural, in nature, and the environment, but then there's us. Whereas with an Indigenous mindset, we're all part of it.
Right.
All right. We're just interconnected with it.
Now, forgive me if this sounds very much like an efficiency type of question. But so what I've been intrigued by, I've been thinking is particularly in my role as president of the EFC, I mean, I meet, and I'm sure the same for you, you're in a leadership role too. Like we're meeting, and I think a lot of our listeners are probably in leadership types of roles where we're meeting people constantly. And we've got maybe supporters who, if we have supporters or congregants, or staff members, or people that we've met in the ministry who we've had like significant contact with, or maybe a significant ministry, and you want to try and stay in. Well, that just multiplies. Like if we just try to think about like how many thousands of people we've probably already met in this year.
Yeah.
And I think I'm trying to sort out, and I'm looking for you to help. Like, what's your strategy been? Let's talk really practically. What's your strategy been about how to sort that out and how to know who to pay attention to and when? And are those all relationships, or is it okay just to say, we've come across a person, we've maybe had a significant moment of ministry, maybe we prayed with them, maybe we met someone on the street and had just a brief interchange with them. How do we sort that all out?
Yeah, well,
I want spiritual guidance.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly when you need the discernment of from the Spirit of the Lord to guide and direct those opportunities to speak life, to speak hope. I think let's not forget family. Yeah,
family as well.
Exactly. I think if we take the approach from having a wholeness aspect, because I know for the sake of efficiency, and part of efficiency is the time management, resource management, all of that. Delving into those things and having those things as, part of our, how we decide where we do what and for how long, it tends to then we begin to compartmentalize. And it's important to recognize a situation that you can't delve into some deep personal conversation in a checkout line, knowing that, you just have a captured moment. So it's certainly being conscious and cognizant of your environment and the realities of the time constraints of everybody else. It's, and so there needs to be, because there's something to taking a wholeness approach. But it's a wholeness about a whole lot of things. It's a wholeness about the individual you're talking to. So the person, the water cooler conversations that you have in the workplace, you understand that, they might not always be conducive to, some deep and protracted peace, but they can still be meaningful. And I think what I had shared earlier about transactional versus transformational, if we can be cognizant of wanting to be transformational, transformational doesn't mean every moment has to be long and protracted.
Right.
It just needs, part of being transformational is approaching the individual and that encounter with a sense of there's a weight to this. Yeah, we might be only talking currently about the weather or how your favorite sports team did the night before. But there's a more meaningful desire of, I want to project a genuine interest in you.
Right.
I think at the heart, that's what relationship is. Because you think in Scripture, we were created for relationship, for meaningful relationship. Adam was plunked down into the middle of perfection. Like God had deemed each element of his days of creation, he said, and it was perfect. It was perfect. It was good. And his goodness was perfection. He plunks Adam into the middle of it and then says, it's not good for man to be alone. So right there, we see how significant it is for humanity to be in relationship. And so I feel that, and then chapter 3 comes and there's a separation, right? A rift has happened. And the rest of inspired Scripture is all about God's attempt and plan to bring restored relationship. That's how vital it is. God's ultimate expression of victory is the restoration of relationship, but not just between us and God, and not just between us, each other, but us, God, and all of creation. That's why the lion will lay down with the lamb. This idea of perfect harmony, a shalom, a wholeness there. And I think that if we kind of enter into even those most innocent and brief of moments and interaction with one another, if there is a genuine interest that is anchoring our initiative, because why did Jesus do what he did? Why did he die on the cross? It's because he loved us. It wasn't just a box that he had to check off.
Right.
He was looking for, if that was the case, he would have found a loophole. But it was that's what was necessary, and he was motivated out of love. The Father was motivated to send his Son, and Jesus was motivated to stay on the cross because of love. Right. And I think if there. And of all the people in the world that should be able to do it, is Christ's followers, because we've experienced that acceptance, we've experienced that genuineness of interest. God is interested in me, and I think if we approach our interactions with one another, that's where you see the opportunities expand.
I love the language that you're using, like the transactional versus the transformational, because I've just been sitting here thinking about Jesus himself. Like he has a small group of people that hang around him for 3 years, a relatively small group of people, but he's interacting with people all of the time. I just saw a clip of Jesus with from a movie about Jesus at the woman at the well, right? John chapter 4. And, he probably never saw her again.
Right.
But it was a utterly transformational, moment. And but for some people, he actually spent a lot more time,
Yeah.
a lot more time with them.
Yeah. And I think there's a place for, and so, yeah, even through those examples, there is a place for transformation, transformational conversation, transformational seeds to be deposited.
Right.
Yeah. In those casual moments, in those brief moments, in those what appear to be accidental occasions to come together. I think they can be divine appointments.
We've only been getting to know each other really in the last couple of years, and I think we've only seen each other about three, 4 times at most, maybe face to face. 3 times, I think, face to face. But this morning we were talking. We had breakfast together, and we were actually talking about pace. It is kind of talking a little bit about what you're just talking about, and that's another thing that I think I'm trying to process. Is it's okay to go at different paces of relationship.
Yeah.
Not every relationship develops at the same pace. But you also had another language, a bit of a different way of speaking about. I wanted you to comment on that.
With certainly within Indigenous thought, Indigenous worldview, there is a different pace. There is a different way that things are approached.
Right.
I often liken it to Euro-Canadian time. We see the time as a resource like a leaky bucket, and so time is what's leaking out. So you only have so much time before it's all gone, right? And we will treat each year like that, each month like that, each week like that, each day like that. And sometimes, when you press, you're treating each hour, each minute like that. Yeah. It's like, we got to get this done, or what have you. You're facing deadlines. And it's, once it's gone, it's gone. For Indigenous people, traditional Indigenous thought is time is actually like a leaky bucket, but there's a faucet that is continually feeding it. So it's renewable. There's a sense. So that's why there's a sense, well, if something doesn't get done today, it can get done tomorrow. And so things, the timing of things, when you did things, was less associated with date and time, like a clock. It was more associated with where you were and the time of year, as in the seasons. Okay, because your geography, see, for Indigenous people, your existence was shaped and highly influenced by, and how well you thrived was shaped by the geography and the seasons, right? So the seasons and the topography determined when you moved, how you moved, where you moved. The animal life, that determined where you moved, when you moved.
Right, yeah.
And so, when you have a society that grows up for eons with that type of influence on your way of life and meaning of life, it's no wonder that even time gets subjected to that, because you ask an Indigenous person, when do you go hunting? Now, for the person that's, for the outfitter or, hunter within, Euro-Canadian culture, it says, well, okay, in October, it's, moose, it's this, goose is... Yeah. Well, you ask an Indigenous person, and they'll say, well, you go moose hunting when the moose are near, and you go goose hunting when the goose are near. You go fishing when the fish are running, right? And depending on what fish you want will also determine, when. And so you can kind of then begin to get a sense as to why pacing, and as Euro-Canadians, we often associate pacing with time, the clock, right? The 12-hour day, the 24-hour day.
Can I just jump in?
Sure.
This really helps.
Yeah.
So if I want to get to know Dan better, it's okay that I get to know him when Dan's here.
Right.
Like I'm not,
Yeah.
or when I'm there, or when we get together.
Yeah.
I think that's really actually really insightful for me, because I think I tend to think about, I've got to make an appointment with Dan. We got to get together. Like it's been like 3 months now since we've seen each other. It's time to make an appointment with him. Because I want the relationship to move forward.
Right.
And I think maybe that's leading to, and this is probably the because our time's almost up, is because I do want to talk just briefly about at the EFC we have been prioritizing Indigenous, non-Indigenous relations, and we've been talking about some of the things coming out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We can't get into all of that here, but one of the things that we're trying to learn is to say, like, relationship really is important. Like if we want to develop right relationship with Indigenous people, the first thing I'll often ask is like, what book would you like me to read? Or, which video series do you want me to watch?
Right.
And what I've learned from even from the advisory committee is to say, well, and I think I'll tell this story is, we had our first advisory committee meeting, and of course I'm feeling a little bit guilty, Dan, because it's been a while and it's time to have another one. And we're working on that. But I remember at the end of the day, we spent a lot of time just getting to know each other. And then I said, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Yeah. Right? That was a standard kind of European question. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this or not, but you kind of got into a little bit of a huddle there for a few minutes. And then you came back and said, go to a powwow. Yeah. And I was like, just so blown up, like, really? Like that's what you want me to do? So we did. You and I went to a powwow this summer. Yeah. And it was great. It was a wonderful time together. It's a hot day. It was 38 degrees or something like that.
It was hot.
But so that's talking about the pace, but it's also talking about the importance of relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for us,
I'm going to tell you something. Yeah. Indigenous people need the power of your presence more so than your proclamation. If before Indigenous people will really accept and care about what you know, they need to know you.
Right.
And from that, it can't be formulaic, right? If there's any suspicion that this connection, this networking is just happening because that person has this agenda, and goal at the end, it'll short circuit and it'll only go so far.
So can you give us some like really practical, like one piece of wisdom? Like how can those of us who are really value this, we want to see the relationships develop, we want to see Indigenous, non-Indigenous people working together, especially in the Christian community.
Sure.
Like, what if I don't even know someone? Like, I'm sure there's listeners out there who say, well, I don't even know an Indigenous person. Yeah. Like what?
Yeah.
And sorry to ask it this way, but what can we do?
Yeah. Well, I think it begins with understanding that, the good news, you don't have to be Indigenous to be effective within, say, Indigenous contexts. And I think what I'll share are principles that are generally applicable across all cultures and ethnicities and things of that nature. So here it is. I think it first takes an authentic expression by the person to convey a genuine interest in the other person. Mm-hmm. All right. So meaning the process is as important as the product, right? If we're wanting to get to know someone, to introduce them to Christ, if we're wanting to get to know someone because we're looking to reconcile or we're looking to repair a relationship or just build something that's more than it is currently, we need to move. We need to be authentic in that expression. And take a genuine interest
in the person.
Yes,
Right.
in that person, who that person is, and that means their journey.
Right.
Because their journey has helped determine who they are. So it's not just about what do you do now, but it's like what got you there.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So and so you got to convey that. Now, obviously, that can't always get conveyed in that first meeting.
Sure.
But having that holistic approach, and I think too. And then secondly to that, so it takes an authentic engagement, and then it takes an authentic engagement for a protracted period of time.
Right.
It's just not a one and done, and then you're good.
No check mark.
Right. It's if you want to have check marks, if you're into lists, it's a whole bunch of lists every day. You're being authentic.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I think holistically, if we can do a paradigm shift in our ways that we approach interactions with one another, how often, particularly because there's been conversations about reconciliation and repairing and all of that, and we're very much wanting to perhaps check boxes. Okay, I've asked for forgiveness. I've received forgiveness. Okay, we're good now. I think there needs to be a sense of understanding that I'm not just engaging a person. So this isn't me and he and she. It's we. Mm-hmm. And I think if we enter into dialogue and interaction, whatever level it is, how surface it is, workplace, or if it's a deep family conversation or what have you, or you're having a heart-to-heart with your best friend, there needs to be this understanding that it's not us versus them. It's not me versus, you. It's
us.
It's us.
Yeah.
And it's not, right? It's not us and them. It's all of us. I think if we can begin to enter into all levels of dialogue with that in mind. So this conversation here, it's not been you and me. It's been us. Right? It's been us.
Yeah.
And so having that kind of holistic take, it creates more of a personal investment.
And I think it takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
I find it takes a lot of pressure off because you feel that you're entering into something, you're entering in. You're not trying to accomplish something per se by yourself, but you're entering into a larger conversation, a larger set of relationships.
Yeah, it helps. It helps shape a proper balance of priority. Yeah. Like, yes, ultimately, you're talking to a sinner or what have you, and you want to get them saved and introduce them to Jesus. It keeps them from being a project.
Right. Yeah. They are people.
Yeah.
They are people.
Yeah.
Listen, Dan, it's been great having you on the podcast. I told you at the beginning that I wanted to hear a little bit about your ministry. Just take a minute or two. Just tell us what Aboriginal Bible Academy is.
Sure.
And if there are people who are interested in it, how would they access it and how would they,
well, Aboriginal Bible Academy, it's a theological institution. We help train and equip. Really, our philosophy is about coming alongside the local assembly, the local church. And so we offer training resources from new believer, Christian foundation, formation studies, lay leadership development, all the way to like full pastoral preparedness and readiness. And so a long time ago, we transitioned from on-site learning, semestered system. Students come to a dorm and live on-site to learn, to a distance education model where their community can now become the living lab where they work out their studies and expression.
So everyone's students are working at their own pace.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. It's asynchronous.
Yeah.
A non-semestered system.
And aimed primarily at the Aboriginal community, or
it is. We look to serve the Indigenous community primarily, but our other than a few of the resources that we offer, they're non-culture specific.
So anyone can take advantage.
Anyone, and we have had traction certainly within the ethnic and cultural groups.
Right. Yeah.
Have gravitated.
I would suspect that even people who are more advanced in the faith, going through your materials might give them different perspectives on the Aboriginal culture. I know you say it's non-cultural, but it probably seeps through.
And certainly when there is opportunity for review sessions and group sessions, sometimes that's in person or it's through media, Zoom or what have you. There's those conversations and interactions that happen. Yeah.
Where does someone go if they want to find out more about it?
Well, it's Aboriginal Bible Academy. So www.aboriginalbibleacademy.ca. They can also reach out, email at info@aboriginalbibleacademy.ca.
And it'll go straight to your desk.
And it will. It'll come, and I won't miss one email.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. It's been wonderful having you here, and looking forward to developing our relationship going forward. And I hope that all those of you who are listening have benefited from our conversation, and let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.